But yeah, it's very emotional thinking about retirement and what that means. And, you have this idea of what you want it to look like, and then you work towards that. But then your life right now does punch you in the face sometimes with things where you're like, oh God. And it makes me almost not want to think about it at all.
Hi, I'm Lindsey Stanberry. I am the founder of The Purse, which is a site for women and money. And I worked for many years as a journalist at Fortune and CNBC and Refinery29.
And I'm Barbara Ginty, and I'm a certified financial planner and the host of the Future Rich podcast. And I own a wealth management firm during the day. And Lindsey and I are very excited to be bringing you a 4-week series where we're interviewing real women about their money.
It should be really interesting.
Tune in and you can check out all of our interviews. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Do you want to start by telling us a little bit and our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Okay. So my name is Amy. I live in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. I am married to a man and I have 2 children, a daughter age 7 and a son age 4.5. And I own my own business, and I have an office in Greenpoint, but we do work around the world. I have a creative agency, and we do video and still image production. My husband is an artisan for a well-known designer in New York, and we have a nice little, very Brooklyn hipster life.
It sounds lovely.
Yeah, it works.
And do you own your
specific
place in Brooklyn?
Yes, I own my place. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom place. I had owned the apartment next door. We bought that place about 11 years ago. And it was a 1-bedroom. And when we wanted to have kids, I was like, okay, we can do this, but I don't want to do this for very long. Yeah. So buying another place was on my mind. And then the apartment next door, which was a 2-bedroom, came up for sale. And so we decided to purchase it and sell our 1-bedroom at the same time, which I very strongly don't recommend doing when you're 3 months pregnant and at your busiest time of year in your job. Because I generally handle all of the paperwork aspects, anything that requires a form or some kind of horrible long-term hideous commitment. I do those things. So buying and selling apartments require that. And so I had to take care of all of that. And somehow, luckily, I mean, the purchasing, selling gods were smiling upon me, because within 3 weeks of putting our apartment for sale and already in the process of buying the one next door, somebody bought it. And we got an offer that was good. And so it all happened at the exact right time. There was like this 2-week grace period where we bought the apartment next door and still had 2 weeks to move in and do we did some light renovations. So we had some time, and then, we were able to move more or less at our leisure within those 2 weeks. So everything worked out as perfectly as it possibly could, with the exception of like slowly going insane in the meantime, but it worked out.
I also bought and sold an apartment while pregnant, but we ended up moving in when I was 8 months pregnant, and it was insane. And my mother unpacked the whole place, and I would go to work and she would text message me pictures of things. Where does it go? Where does it go? Where does it go? Which is why I ended up with like a bunch of expired drugs. And like, it's like, there's Advils from 2015. And I don't know why it got passed, but here
right. You're like, oh, canned food with dents in it. Like, why do I have this? And why did I move it to a new apartment? So the detritus of your life to get super exposed in those times. And it's not fun. Those realities are horrible. But then you get to purge and clean out, although I don't know how much of that you can do when you're 8 months pregnant. I was only 3 months pregnant. I was by that time feeling a little better, feeling okay. But everything just felt quite overwhelming. It was my first kid. And, it was hard to let go of the stress of the previous months of all of the stuff you have to do. And, things went pretty well, but it's still stressful. But so we do own our apartment, to get back to your question. But one of the reasons I was interested I am interested in what you're talking about is because our financial plans kind of got a little derailed. So from that point, we were like, okay, we're having a kid. I now have a second kid. And while I was pregnant with him, we were like, what are we going to do when we grow out of this apartment? I'm the kind of person that kind of needs and wants a certain amount of space around me. and my husband less so. But for me, it's something valuable. And I was like, okay, eventually we will need a bigger place. It's a decent sized place. It's like 900 something square feet, which for New York is pretty good. So we started like investing, and we were talking to an advisor, and we started our whole like investment thing. But even if we sell our place at a huge profit, which I feel like we would, the way the market is and seems to be going, we still can't afford to live in our same neighborhood. Even if we put like an insane down payment on a 3-bedroom, they're still too expensive. So then it became this thing about like, what if we have to move, not just relocate within our neighborhood? And then that requires all of its own research and commitments and big changes. So we're kind of in this position where even if we sell our place, we still can't really get what we want. So it's just something to consider. And then obviously the last few years investments have gone really topsy-turvy. So, we're not able to do, even if we found the perfect place, I don't know that we can make it happen anyway. So, things derail.
Yeah, I'm in the same situation, and it's tough, and it's hard to know what to do because you've got school-age kids and, a neighborhood you like and friends, and, you're established, and it's not as easy as just, I don't know, New York, it's so funny that changing neighborhoods is so dramatic, but it's really dramatic.
Yeah. You feel like you're moving to a different country.
Yeah. And starting over.
It's like that Seinfeld where Elaine starts dating somebody that lives downtown, and they all freaked out. They're like, you can't do that. What are you doing? Like, he had a different area code. Like, I think it was like 646. I don't know, something weird, but it was like a horrible thing. So I totally get that.
Yeah.
And then the other trick is you probably have a really good mortgage rate on your current property.
Yes. My rate is 3.5%. So I get these daily emails from Zillow based on my search or whatever.
Yeah.
And they kill me because all the apartments I want are like $1.8 million or more, but then they're like 6 or 7% interest rate. And then it's not happening no matter what I do. I even I plug in that calculator. I'm like, what if I did $1 million down payment? That would be crazy. Yeah. And it's still $10,000 a month. I'm like, okay, I need to reset my reality here in a major way.
There's something right about the 1 point, and then you think 1.4, that's no big deal. And you're like, wait a second, that's $400,000. That's $600,000. It's $800,000. It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. Yeah.
On top of
I feel like, exactly. And even if right now, I think
it's just the principal and interest. It's not even your taxes or any other period.
And then, exactly. And I feel like I've had some surprise expenses the last year. My expenses skyrocketed kind of unexpectedly relating to my children. And so we had to put kind of all of our financial plans on hold, essentially. So, which was another thing, I was like, oh, that's worthy of talking about. What happens when your own life, not just bigger aspects of okay, there's kind of a recession. Is there? I don't know. Inflation. Yes. But personal things can crop up and surprise you, which is what happened to me this past year, because we were on a really good road to saving, and we have 6 figures in our savings account, and we have all this money invested. A good amount of money, with the goal of increasing our ability to give a massive down payment on our next place. But right now we're just eating into savings every single month. And I'm like, okay, is this ever going to end? And so, now the reality of actually getting that new place, I just don't see it happening with our current expenses.
And can I ask what the current expense is?
Yeah, sure. My daughter, she has sensory processing disorder. And so this is requiring from us, this was a surprise. And we figured this out about, the end of kindergarten, and now she's going into 2nd grade. So in order to kind of help her, we have to do occupational therapy once a week. And then we started also doing play therapy because of her processing issues, she developed a phobia of vomiting, which is kind of a crazy one. But she was 5, and it got really, really bad and was affecting her daily at school. And so OT, the occupational therapy, addresses the physical aspect of this issue, but there's an emotional aspect of the issue that they don't address. So we were like, okay, we need to also deal with the behavioral and social and phobia things that crop up as a result of her body just being in fight or flight inappropriately. So now we have these 2 therapies we have to pay for every week because nobody takes health insurance that does these services. Right. So it's like, okay, that's a lot of money. And then on top of that, we have to do speech. My son has a speech delay, which we attribute largely to the pandemic. He was 13 months old when lockdown happened. Mm-hmm. And so he's in speech therapy twice a week as well. And we have to pay for that privately too. He got approved for services from the city through the Department of Education, but they couldn't find him a speech therapist last year in our district. So I was like, well, I can't wait a year. I mean, he needs this now. So speech therapy twice a week, OT, regular therapy for my daughter, all of that amounts to a few $1,000s a month. And then up until this month, we were paying $2,500 a month for his school as well. Right. Although that will stop because he's going into public school. But I mean, it's almost cursed. I'm sorry. That's probably not allowed on your podcast. It's a buttload of money. Every month, it's almost all of my take home. So it's like, okay, we're doing nothing other than this, but this has caused a lot of friction in my household. It's been totally unexpected. It's impossible to save when you're spending all your money. And then of course, regular things pop up all the time. Dental work, gifts you have to buy and want to buy, things like that you can say you can budget for, but ultimately sometimes you're just surprised. So yeah, we've had to put kind of all of our financial plans completely on hold just to manage our just monthly, almost weekly overheads, which got kind of crazy.
Yeah, those therapies are really expensive, and the therapist shortage in New York City is a really big. I think it's across the country, but it's a huge deal.
Yeah, it's a huge deal, and all of
not easy for you to like navigate scheduling all the appointments and.
Horrible. Yeah, it's just made our life. It's fine. Like it's working and both of them are doing great and have like their situations have improved tremendously. So it makes it totally worth it. I feel great about it. Other than the fact that, okay, now that this is our reality, like what can we do about it? And my answer is nothing. I mean, how do you create money out of thin air? You don't. It's either there or it isn't. So, or if it's there and you have to spend it, then it's gone. So yeah, we've just had to do a lot of kind of emotional rewiring around what the future holds financially and, what our goals then can feasibly be. And of course, one thing I tried to do, one thing I tried to do was find health insurance that did cover these services. And I mean, I don't want to know how much time I spent doing the research on that, and it doesn't exist. So, and I'm like paying a few $1,000s a month just for really good health insurance because I have to see some specialists. And they're like, yeah, we don't cover them. I'm like, oh, okay. That's great.
Thanks for taking my money. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. What are you doing with all my money?
Right.
Nothing. So yeah.
So one question I have, just because you are in Brooklyn, so you're in the high bracket, right? You have a state and city. And so as you said, you can't make money out of thin air. So I'm just wondering, you own your own company, your husband works for somebody, are you still doing the retirement savings? So that would lower your taxable income because it's all about what you're netting, right? So you could probably maybe still do retirement because you wouldn't lose as much, right? If it was pre-tax, because you're losing so much between all 3 taxes and FICA. So
yes.
Are you still doing retirement in addition to like all the regular expenses?
We're doing it when it makes sense. So I do have an IRA, so does my husband, and I have an SEP. Yeah, so those are good. I just can't always afford to, depending on like how my businesses did over the year. I take on the same amount every year, but like depending on our profits and all of that and how taxes look, my accountant will either recommend putting in an amount or not. And then with the SEP, I own my business 50-50 with my partner. So we have to do the same thing for our SEPs. So I'm told. And so we either have the money in the bank to do it or not. And so we have to consult. So yeah, I have this other person I'm wedded to financially, which is my business partner. So that also makes things It just complicates things a little bit in this regard for sure. Like if my accountant's like, I recommend doing the SEP, we'll take that money out of our business account and pay it. But either we have it or not. And then we have to think, okay, if we have it, great. If we also have it, but don't have any big jobs coming in, then no, I don't want to spend $100,000 out of my account. I might need that to pay myself for the next month or two. Like, so we have to really take everything as like a in that moment basis, like what makes sense right now. Because the last few years have been so up and down business wise.
And is that partially because of the pandemic with the COVID? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, for sure. Like before the pandemic, we were, doing amazingly. And clients had marketing budgets, and that's what they pay us. During the pandemic, we couldn't do any production at all for months, maybe a year or something crazy. No, I'd say it took about 6 to 8 months to start doing any in-person production. So we switched all post-production, which is fine, but budgets were, not terrible, but not quite as generous. Everybody was scared. And our main clients became wine and spirits clients because they were the only ones profiting for the first couple of years of the pandemic. But they often, good work is expensive, and they didn't always have the budgets to do the quality we want. So we had to figure out ways to get things done to our own standards, but within budgets other client, they were offering. So things got tricky. Although, things were okay. We had good enough clients. Like we did a lot of work with Belvedere Vodka. They made a fortune during the pandemic. They were like, hey, our retail sales are up 400%. So yeah, we're going to do this. So we just got really lucky kind of having an in into that world. If we didn't, I don't know what we would have done. I would have probably had to shut down and just get a 9-to-5 job, which I didn't want to do. So yeah, luckily it's fine. But again, to answer your point, yes, we have retirement. I have not been able to contribute to it. I did buy whole life insurance, which we contribute to every year, a considerable amount as well.
Can I ask you a question? Why are you contributing to a whole life versus retirement, which will reduce your taxable income when you're in a high tax environment?
Well, maybe it's the advice we were given, which was that once we take, if we live long enough to recoup the results of that, we should be through some kind of rich person loopholes that exist. Okay. So I'm told we can withdraw funds monthly from those accounts tax-free in some way. I don't know if this is something you're familiar with or if there's been a hoax and I'm an idiot. But that's what we were told. So yeah, we're kind of looked into.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in taking your tax rate today when there's a bit of a stretch, right? So we have not enough money today to do everything we want, but yet we're taking the money and funding it for something in the future, which that's assuming you're in a high tax bracket and you're borrowing against the policy. And an insurance policy is really meant for a death benefit. So currently we have a problem that we're in an apartment that's feeling too small. We're having insufficient revenue and we're not funding retirement. So just taking a ballpark guess here without doing a deep dive, I would not think whole life is in your best interest. I would think funding your retirement, lowering your taxable income, because in order to get the money to pay your whole life, we're putting it through the tax machine. So we're losing federal, state, and city tax. You're paying 3 taxes to get that dollar, and then that dollar goes into a life insurance policy. I'm going to take a long shot. I don't think it's going to outperform a regular mutual fund or ETF. I just don't think it will. So I think we're better off not paying all of those tax and having more money in your pocket, even if that means more money in your IRA or your SEP, because it's going to lower your taxable income. So you're going to net more by not paying as much in tax. Because in order to get the money to fund the whole life, you are paying tax on every one of those dollars because it has to hit your bank account.
Well, one detail. Yeah, no, I hear you. There's one detail, which is some of our, we're using to pay for the bulk of it, more than 50%, the dividends off of some of our investments. Do you know what I mean? Like there's like cash dividends. I don't know the vocabulary. I let my husband deal with it.
Inside of the policy, the dividends are paying for some of it. Or are you using dividends?
Yeah, like we withdraw, let's say there's $15,000 of cash that I've made, some of these investments. I take that and pay that towards the whole life. So I've lowered my actual contribution of my existing money by 60%. Does that make sense?
It does. What's the
I'm
death
saying?
benefit? Yeah, what's the death benefit on the policy? What does it pay?
I don't remember. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I have to
What's
look it up.
So just say in theory, how much do you think you need if you were to pass away today for both of the kids to pay off the mortgage? What do you think you would need if you were to pass away? What would your family need?
A lot of money. We owe almost $400,000 on our mortgage still.
Okay.
And my take home, I pay myself 120 grand a year, and I take money throughout the year as well from my business. So I end up probably making closer to 150, sometimes more, sometimes less. So yeah, I think as far as a death benefit, I would need a lot of money to like make my family comfortable in my absence.
You'd probably need at least 2 million. Let's just as a starting point, right?
Yeah, that sounds great.
I highly doubt the whole life is 2 million.
At this point, it's definitely not. It's definitely not, for sure.
So you're funding. So here's my concern. My concern is you're funding a whole life policy, which is really meant for death benefit. It's not going to cover the death benefit that your family needs, which means you're actually underinsured. And you're underinsured.
Well, I also have regular life insurance.
Like term insurance?
Yes, I do.
Okay. How much do you have with that?
I don't know.
That's
it's not 2 million.
Okay.
No, these are all good. I should know this, but it's definitely not 2 million. It may be 1 million or 1.5, but it's not. I remember being like, that's decent.
So that would be great that you have that. But here's my thought is you could probably be in a better financial situation if you weren't funding a whole life policy. You had the proper term insurance so that if there, God forbid, is a death prematurely, which typically won't happen, but you get it just to protect your family. If you're a high income earner and you have 2 young children who need services that are not covered, and then you take that difference and put it towards your retirement or for this period of time where you need excess cash to pay for the service. But you just need to have the numbers run by somebody who isn't incentivized to sell you the most expensive insurance product, who's going to make the biggest commission from selling you whole life. The commission on whole life is significant. Like you can make a ton of money selling whole life. So you need someone to run the numbers for you. Even your CPA should be able to tell you what the difference would be if you were not funding the whole life, and what that difference would be if it went in your retirement account from a tax standpoint. What if you were going to be netting or not owing? Because with businesses, it's estimated tax usually. So you could just have your accountant run the numbers, and he's not incentivized for you to go one way or the other if he doesn't make a dollar on either.
Yeah, no, that all makes perfect sense. And we signed up for this, and I was like, this is great, because so everything you're saying makes perfect sense. We were sold this hard, and we debated about it for a long time. And I was like, there's salespeople, like my husband's like much more like innocent than I am. So the whole time we're talking to these guys, and they're also offering financial advice. I had these doubts, and I was like, are we just being fleeced here? I don't know what's going on. But then here's what my issue is. I'm terrified of being old and poor. Terrified.
Yeah, you don't want to be old and
that's
poor,
the reason we're doing
it. Also don't want to get to age 65 when I see people come in and they funded a whole life policy for the entire time and never delivered. And the person who sold it to you is long out of the business because they made so much money selling the shit. Sorry. That they retired well before you guys did. I haven't seen it work, and I've met with over 2,000 people, normal people. Yep, haven't seen it work.
Right. I mean, is that the kind of thing that only works when you already have tons of money, so it almost doesn't matter?
Yeah, I think here's what I think. I think you should be doing every basic type of financial planning before you get to whole life insurance. I think whole life comes when everything else has been maxed out. When you've maxed out your retirement, you have a ton of non-qualified money saved, you're doing well in real estate, and then, we've ticked every single box. There's no other investments left. Let's investigate like a universal life policy because we've maxed out everything else and we need a tax shelter. You don't need a tax shelter right now. You need a tax shelter.
Right. And then on top of, this is all making sense. My husband does not have, he has an IRA, but through his job, he does not have any retirement. The only benefits he gets is health insurance. So that was another reason for him to kind of be more into this as a form of a retirement account. So I don't know if that's
He
true,
could
but
just
that is
do,
part of
yeah,
the point of view.
he could still save and he could do a non-qualified, or what you could do as a team, because you're married, right? Married filing joint. You're not maxing out your SEP.
Right.
So it's
Well,
how,
can
if you
you
think
even
about
max
it,
it out?
yeah, you can max out your SEP every year as a business owner.
What does
You and
that
your
mean?
partner have to do it together using the full amount allowed, which is 20, I think it's 20 or 25% self-employment income. Which means you could do a considerable amount every year. And he can do his IRA. So then you could be putting away as a household, you know, upwards of 20,000 a year. Which if you're not doing that, then I think you're better off having it in a retirement account and getting your tax break today, when it seems like you need your dollars to go the furthest.
Yeah, that's a good point. And no, we haven't contributed. I think the last 2 years I haven't contributed at all to my retirement accounts. And part of that is the issues I'm talking about right now. We just don't seem to have the money. But then part of that is all of this uncertainty for my business, thinking like the money we have, we really need to hold on to it in the event that we just don't have the clients or they don't have the budgets to cover our monthly overheads, which hover around 25 grand a month. So it's like, if we can't guarantee we'll get that, then like, we can't pay into all of this, but we do find the money for these whole life policies.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Lindsey's also,
it hurts.
Yeah, Lindsey's also interviewed a ton of advisors, and I've been in the business. I've been in finance for 17 years, and I don't believe in it. I would never sell it to anybody. I'm licensed to sell it to people. I've never sold one ever. And Lindsey's interviewed tons of advisors.
Tons of people. And they all say, don't do it. And it's funny, I was talking to my mom about it yesterday. We were just having a conversation. She was saying that when my dad first graduated from medical school, that like the insurance brokers came out of the woodwork and they all were pushing whole life. And she was like, we had a huge fight over it. Because I think in much the same way that your husband, where he was, you know, naive and it's easy to see why they're incentivized to sell it, but it's also like they play into all those fears, right? Like the fear.
Oh, totally. I mean, that's ultimately why we said yes.
And I would say they're the best salespeople. Like to unsell a whole life policy is literally like if you think about it, you're sitting here defending the whole life policy. Right.
Because I'm like, oh wow, we're so stupid.
No, well, not that, but
you're not.
Sell it. You're not. Their sales pitch is phenomenal. The problem is that
it's amazing.
I need someone to clean my house. They're like, oh yeah, the whole life policy. They come on Tuesdays and they'll clean the whole apartment. Like they'll tell you whatever you want to hear. Like they really don't care. And I'm not saying
they did. I mean, yeah. When I say I'm afraid to be a poor old person, like it's really, truly one of my biggest fears. And so when they say, well, if you contribute X amount every year till you're 65, 66, and I'm 44, I'm like, that's not that far away. Should I live that long? You know, it's really not. And so I'm like,
tell you, when you get to 65, if you do everything else right, you shouldn't need life insurance. You shouldn't need it. Your mortgage is paid. Your kids are now, you have a 4.5-year-old, so that child will be 24 and a half, and your 7-year-old will be 27.
I'm not giving them money anymore.
Right. So they don't need a death benefit, right? Who's the death benefit for at 65 when your mortgage is paid and you've been saving a percentage of your income for the next 20 years? You're a comfortable retired person who doesn't have a need for a death benefit. Now they're not going to tell you that because they don't get paid if they tell you that.
Right.
But
well, we weren't really doing it so much for the death benefit. It was more about like this idea, like, oh, we can have a monthly income from this thing.
You'll have a monthly income from your retirement account, which is just a retirement account, which has your name on it and you're not borrowing against it and gives you a tax break today. The whole life policy is an insurance policy that they're selling as an investment. But the premise of insurance is, it's a death benefit. But what it's made for is death benefit. That's why they created it. They didn't create it for investments. They have the investment so that they can have a sales pitch.
So what is that loophole that they keep talking about? Like, yes, you can draw 5 grand, 6 grand, 7 grand from this monthly, not have to worry about anything until you die. Like,
and you're borrowing against it. And did they mention it lowers your death benefit as you borrow?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, it'll lower your death benefit. Every time you take a distribution, it'll lower your death.
Right. But I guess presumably they're assuming I wouldn't care, or it doesn't matter by then because there's so much money in it.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I mean, I will bet you that at 65, it will not have all that much. I could be wrong.
I have to look. They made this chart. I have a chart I can access.
It's a projection, and it will say
it's a projection. And to be honest, I look at it and I'm like, this is overly complicated to make people's eyes glaze over. And there's a lot of nonsense numbers on it, I could tell.
But it still looks done? How have you compared the performance? Don't use 2022 as a bad year, but if 2021, what was your IRA performance compared to the whole life policy performance?
Well, they're guaranteeing like a 4% interest profit, whatever, something minimum 4% a year through Guardian, because they've never performed poorly in their entire existence. Apparently, I never really did that comparison. My eyes glaze over as well. I just wanted to hear, and that this is what they told me, that I would not be poor and old, that I'd have this money, it would be untaxed and on top of my Social Security and everything else I have accrued up until then, I'll basically be living my dream. That's what I wanted to hear. And maybe it's been the last few years of my finances performing so poorly because of Donald Trump and everything else and COVID and all of this. Everything has like tanked, and it's coming back, but like over the last few weeks, I'd say overall I've lost about $30,000. Like it went up and then just like it's just been performing so poorly that it doesn't feel like I'll have enough. It does feel like I'll be worrying about money when I'm 65, and that just seems like such a shitty thing to have to do.
Yeah, it is totally a shitty thing, but nobody can actually promise you what you'll have at 65. So anyone who says I can promise you that you won't have any trouble at 65 is making a promise they can't keep. Right? They can say, we think and project that this is where you'll be at 65, but nobody can guarantee that's where you'll be in 65. So an honest assurance would be, if you get the cheap insurance now that gives you the most coverage to take care of your family, your kids, so that if God forbid something happens while they're young and it's now a financial tragedy at the top of a personal tragedy, because that's what it is when you lose a parent young, right? You have two tragedies, right? You have loss of income and loss of a parent. So if I can cover my family now while I have a lot of overhead, right? And I have a runway to go to retirement, that's your risk, right? When we get to 65, there's less risk, right? Then it's personal tragedy, but not financial. And if I can continue to save and use the vehicles that are provided to me to save with the most tax advantage, because I think that's what you need in your current state in life, and I stay the course, you should be totally fine. And you can project that out, whether you assume a rate of return of 5 or you assume a rate of return of 7, that's all projected out. And your accountant can do that for you too. Real easy calculation. Then you should be fine, but nobody can really come in and promise or guarantee you that in 20 years, there might not be a blip in the road, right? I mean, it's nice to hear that they guarantee
it's great to hear.
But I don't
it felt very emotional. It did feel like an emotional decision ultimately. Like there was a lot, like I tried to use common sense, but in this regard, this type of issue, it's financial, but it really is about your life and the quality of it, and just considering all of these options, some of which are horrible. It was, I heard what I wanted to hear, but then as a parallel thing, I do have this issue of, if my business partner doesn't want to or can't do that contribution, then I'm kind of stuck too. So then I have this IRA that I think the max contribution a year is like $5,000. So I'm like, well, that's not going to get me that much.
No.
So what do I do?
So I have a question. Have you talked to your accountant about structuring the business so that you have your own entity where you 1099 yourself from your entity to create another entity so that you have your own SEP IRA, so you don't have to be tethered to your business partner?
No, I didn't even know that existed. We structured to an S corp a couple of years ago.
See if you can 1099 yourself from the S corp, or ask them if you can change the structure so that you're not tethered to your business partner, so that because to have a SEP, you don't have to have an S corp. So you could just 1099. See if you can 1099 yourself. Maybe you do a little, and if you can do it that way, you're not tethered to the business partner. Because SEP is a great vehicle as a self-employed person.
Right. So if I do that, then he can go his way and I go mine in terms of our individual SEPs.
I think it's worth paying the accountant or an attorney to say, we want to be in business together, but we don't want to be tied together for the SEP. Like, how do we structure this so that we can make our own retirement decisions, but still have an entity? Well, whether it's one entity owns the other entity, I don't know, but I would think that you'd be able to work around that.
Right. But do you feel like the SEP is the best retirement option? Like, are there other options?
I mean, there's a solo 401k that you could do, but I would just do the SEP.
Yeah.
It has a high contribution limit, which is, I think, the advantage of it.
Yeah, I think twice I put 50 grand in, or 53 grand or something like that. Yeah, it felt great to be able to do that. So I can't guarantee I could do that ever again based on, just how the years go, but
yeah, but it's great.
It was possible. Yeah, true. No, I didn't even know that was an option.
Yeah, you just want to make sure that you could have like a flow through entity. I would just talk to the accountant, or they might say, again, a lawyer, but just say, I want to have the ability to do my own SEP without my business partner. So do we need a flow through entity? How do we structure it? So whether it's 50% of the earnings then flow through to your own entity, and then you would do your SEP. Like, I'm not a lawyer, so you need to consult either a lawyer or CPA, but I would think there's a workaround.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to talk to him. And I think my partner would understand the need to do that as well. Because then, he would have freedom too. He has a different financial situation than I do. So, that would make sense. Because also we take distributions, and they have to be equal as well, which is fine, because I think, there is an emotional aspect to having a business partner and dealing with money. And he's very different in terms of money than my husband is. And so it's just a very different relationship, and having all these equalities between us as business partners has actually been very helpful. So also restructuring, I'm like, oh, I wonder if that would like do something weird. Like, finances are so emotional.
Yeah. So there's always like a give and take with every financial decision, right? So if you're doing this flow through entity, then that might change the dynamic a little bit. But I still definitely think it's worth investigating, given that your husband doesn't have any sort of savings plan at work. You're the only one that will have access to this big contribution amount. So I think it's definitely worth investigating.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense, especially because not only does my husband not have retirement offered through his job, he has the kind of job where if he lost his job, his skills are totally not transferable to another job. And he makes a very high salary for what he does. He's an artisan in New York City making 6 figures. And it's like, if he had to get another job, there is no way in hell he'd ever match the current salary, in which case we'd be in a pickle based on, our current needs. And those needs may change one day, but I'm not in a rush to stop doing therapies for my kids.
Right.
So they are what they are for the time being. So that's just another layer of fear that we have. It's like, what if, like, he did get laid off during the pandemic for a few months, and they rehired him. He's gotten a raise since then, but still, like, that, his boss isn't going to live forever. He's in his 60s. He might want to retire someday. Like, what are we going to do when he has to get a job and makes 50 grand less? That's definitely within the realm of possibility.
Yeah. How closely tied our two incomes are, like, you really need both of them to make it work, right? I don't think that people talk enough about, like, we talk about dual income households and like women stepping back because childcare is so expensive, but I think we often forget like how important it is. Like, families' security is built on 2 people working.
Oh yeah, we couldn't live our lives without both of us working, even when one of us's salaries are completely maxed out. It still makes sense for both of us to work for a variety of reasons, financial and just emotional.
Right.
So yeah, it's really tricky. And I found that no matter what we made, like, I started my first job here, I think I made 32 grand a year, and I thought I was rich. Whether I'm making 32 or taking home 150, I always, like, it's like a balloon filling with air. You always fill the balloon. Like, I lived and within 32 grand a year, and I'm living within 150, and you just rise to meet whatever that is. But I'm like, going back the other way is it just doesn't feel good, especially, if you have kids or some other need to spend money, because they're really expensive.
They're really expensive. And the unexpected expenses just never stop. I always think it's really funny that people are like, you know, the emergency fund for the unexpected expense. It's like, no.
What?
You should just expect
I don't bother.
You should just expect them, right? Like,
exactly. Just expect that. Yeah, my daughter needed a crown. It was like, okay, there's $350, even though her insurance covered most of it. I still had to pay $350, and like I needed dental work and had to pay a few $100s. You know, it's just like I didn't expect these things. How could you?
No. Appliances break down, your car breaks down.
Or your best friend has a wedding in Crete.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't cheap, but it was like, I have to go. We have to do this. I have to make it work. And the expense was one of the several reasons I went on my own. But it was like, yeah, I'm going to be spending a few $1,000s on this, but it's worth it. But I didn't expect to have this expense, you know? It just happens. So yeah, it's hard. But yeah, the idea of keeping more money in our account today does sound really, really good.
Yeah, I would have your accountant run the numbers because he is your tax numbers. And so you could just say, hey, we really allocated the money that we're putting towards the whole life back through the tax machine and into a retirement account. What does our take home look like? Or how does that lower our tax bill? And I would just have the math make the decision, right? If it's better for you financially, then that would be the better decision.
Oh, I have a feeling it would look much better on paper and in every possible way to have that money now. I mean, it's a considerable amount of money. Yeah.
What is what about your parents' retirement and your husband's parents' retirement? Like, are you feeling this anxiety because of what you're seeing from their experience, or is it just, you know,
in a way? Yeah. In a way, so my parents are pretty well set, actually. Like, I didn't grow up with money. My mom was a school teacher, and my dad was a stay-at-home dad. He was an artist until I was at least in my early teens. He didn't get a job until then. So yeah, we lived on a teacher's income, a special ed teacher's income in New York City. So life was different back then. Life was cheaper considerably. And they did buy their apartment. It was only $60,000 for a pretty huge 3-bedroom, but it's in Jamaica, Queens. And they only paid it off recently because they put so little into it throughout the years. But anyway, they had to scrimp and save for that 10% deposit. They had to borrow money for $6,000 back in the day. But anyway, so there's no retirement coming from my dad's side other than Social Security. But my mom was very smart in her youth and was able to secure an amazing pension. And she gets paid more monthly now than she did while she was working. So they're actually in the best shape of their lives. They don't offer this type of pensions anymore at all. No, she was just like, they did for a brief period in time. I was there. I got it. She was like, I don't know what we'd do without it. So they're actually really well set. They have no mortgage. Their expenses are minimal. My brother and I don't need money. We don't ask for money, and they don't do anything. So, you know, they just have money. They contribute yearly to my kids, like one of those college savings accounts.
Yeah.
They contribute like $5,000 a year to each of them. So ultimately they'll have a lot to use if they decide to go to college or any kind of schooling after high school. So that affected me because I don't know how much actual planning they put in, but the fact is they're quite comfortable now and they don't worry about money. They still act poor because that's their mindset, but they don't worry about money at all. And in reality, they're not up at night thinking about it. And I'm like, well, that's a good place to be, because if my mom didn't have that pension, well, I think they'd be completely screwed. My husband's parents, they're both, actually his mother just had her retirement party today. She retired, his father retired, they're divorced. And I don't think they have any money to spend. I think they have enough for a modest lifestyle, but I don't believe there's much beyond that. And that freaks me out a little bit. Yeah. If something happens to one of them, I don't know that they'd be covered. It worries me a lot. So, and it worries me, like, what if my mom passes away? What's my dad going to do? He has no actual money on his own, aside from whatever my mom brings in.
Did your mom cover him on the pension?
I don't know.
Usually,
They do have a financial advisor. I'd imagine that they see yearly and that handles their portfolio, whatever that even looks like. I don't know. They don't want to talk about it too much because I think it relates to death in some way.
Yeah.
And it's a really hard discussion to have, even though I'd really like to, because not for me, I don't think I'm getting much in the end. So it's not about that. It's about making sure they're comfortable if one of them dies. I'm like, I can't really afford to do much for them right now. So yeah, it's worrisome. But again, that kind of contributes to my worries about myself because I'm like, oh, I don't want to be a burden to my kids. You know, I want to do stuff when they're out of the house. I have a lot of things I'm putting off as a mother of young children that I definitely want to do that I think I can only do when I retire. Yeah. So this idea of not being poor or not worrying is really attractive.
Yeah, it's hard to balance all those different, there's different competing priorities. And getting parents to talk about their money, it's an ongoing fight that my husband and I have because
really
they don't talk about it in their family at all.
No,
my parents are actually pretty open about it, which is nice. Like we've had conversations about it. Very practical ones, which I appreciate. And actually like have some morbid sense of humor about it.
That's nice. That's good. Because it can be tense thinking like, okay, here's what happens when I die. Like who wants to think about that?
Nobody does. It's really depressing.
Nobody.
And you know, I also believe my parents are going to live forever. Fine.
Of course. You know, like right. I know, but I'm like, oh God, you got like my parents, they have money. So I'm like, you're old. And I'll say that to them, like, you're old. Make your life really nice. Okay. You're not poor in the Bronx anymore. You know, like do your bathroom nice and all of that. And they're like, we don't want to spend it. We'll give it to you. I'm like, I don't want it. Get it out of here. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard to talk about them. And like their whole finances are in some weird locked file cabinet because they do everything on paper still. And I'm like, Lord help me. I don't want to look
common for that generation.
Yeah, it's insane actually. Well, you could do this online, you know, a couple of clicks. But yeah, it's very emotional thinking about retirement and what that means. And, you know, you have this idea of what you want it to look like, and then you work towards that. But then your life right now does punch you in the face sometimes with things where you're like, oh God. And it makes me almost not want to think about it at all because I have to think very day to day at the moment just to keep ourselves afloat. And also I do I have expensive tastes. And I feel often very deprived because I don't and can't buy things that I want and like and love. And so, there's a lot of sacrifice going on.
Same on the expensive taste. I feel you on that one, Amy.
Yeah. I'm like, why do I like these things? Why can't I like those things? But that's how it is.
But you know, that's the good thing about living in a small apartment. There's not as much room for those things. So
actually, that's a great point, but that's one of the things between me and my husband is that he keeps buying stuff. I'm like, we can't keep buying, like we literally can't. Like we're gonna start looking like hoarders. No, we're out of room. And that's one of the reasons why I'm like, we do need a bigger apartment.
Right.
But then we have all these issues. So like, yeah.
I also think that it's important to remember that like your kids are small. Like we're like so deep in it. Like we're in the most expensive time of our lives. And like the most work of like everything, like the most work of your career, the most work of your family, like aging parents on top of it. Like it all comes in one deluge in a way that like you don't experience in your 20s and 30s and 4 children, and you don't experience hopefully in your 50s and 60s when your children are grown. So like I think it's really important to keep in mind.
Yeah, it's a temporary phase.
Yeah, it's a long temporary. Like right now, they need entire new wardrobes. They need entire new wardrobes every season. I'm like, I have a wardrobe of clothes that is useless now. And it's frustrating because it is an expense. And I see dollar signs just going away every time I look at it. But then I'll get like 50 Amazon packages a week of shitty t-shirts that my husband thinks he needs. And I'm just like, he's like, what? They're only $20. But I'm like, but you have 5 of them. that's not $20. That's $100. So it's like, yeah, this constant weighing. I feel like sometimes like one of those mimes in those little boxes and like all the sides are just right around me. And that's where we're at with money. It's hard.
I think it's really cool that you run your own business though. And you've,
Thanks.
been able to make that work for all these years. And like,
Yeah,
I don't know, like
really amazing.
From the outside, I always think it's good to have somebody else give you some perspective, right? Like you own a 2-bedroom, 2-bath in the neighborhood that you want to live in, and you've got 2 great kids and husband and your own business.
And a business. I know it is great. And I do feel daily.
I don't mean that like you like not like a grateful thing, just like a outside perspective. Like it,
Thanks. Well, it's a hustle. I mean, it is a major hustle. I feel up to the hustle, but I do feel like, yes, I have a creative agency. We're creative, but I'm a business person as well. And I do really well with my business money. Personal money is different because I can completely divorce the emotional aspect from my business and literally just look at numbers and analyze them and make the best decisions for us. It's just that when your emotions get involved, just everything goes a bit topsy-turvy. And then you have your other people's point of view. My business partner's like, you deal with that stuff. I'm not good at it. I'm like, okay. My husband and I, we don't always see eye to eye. So, and we're contributing more or less equally, and it's our children. Like we kind of have to figure out a middle ground. So sometimes neither of us are happy. And that can feel really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really hard.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. When, someday I can buy 1 pair of sneakers for my daughter instead of 1,000 because her feet are so sensitive. She can't wear shoes. And yeah, it's insane. Yeah.
Yeah, it will get easier. But I would say you have the logic part because you make those decisions for your business. So I would lean on your CPA and say, show me the math, and then put on your logic hat as if it's a business decision, because your retirement is very similar to the business decision. You want to make a rational decision on it, not an emotional, because you do have 20 plus years. So even though the market has not been great, if you look at the market over the last 30, right?
Yeah.
It'll average out and you have time on your side. So now is the time to put on your logic and lean on your CPA, right? Because they're just going to keep it match, right? They're not going to.
Yeah. And he's as logical as they get. He's pretty square.
Usually they are very square. So
he's really square.
He can help with the logic on it, or she can help with the logic on it.
It's tough with my husband because I'm actually way more logical than him in this regard. I can see black and white in places. So whereas I think he feels he's more innocent in that way than I am, and wants to believe the best parts of things. So I think he'd have a hard time hearing this, but then I think the idea of having all this money that we're giving away every month, we feel like we're giving it to ourselves, but we might not need it as then. So I do see that, and I am persuaded by that.
Well, this is super interesting. I mean, we went through a lot tonight.
Yeah, this has been really great, and your advice is profound, frankly.
Thank you.
Yeah, really. Like I really needed to hear that. So thank you. And you were very adamant. I'm really sold by that.
I just hate to see people get to retirement and then there's nothing you can do 25 years later, like if 25 years down the road, that reality sets in that wasn't the best choice, all you can do is cut your losses. And that's I will say that is a very hard pill to swallow at 65 if it doesn't deliver. And I just,
for sure.
I would be more surprised if it delivers than if it didn't.
I need to talk to more financial advisors that don't also sell life insurance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm licensed for insurance because I have to be.
Right.
But we were better off getting a neutral opinion of somebody who is a fiduciary and somebody who's gone through the CFP program. It was like a 10-hour exam. Right. It's expensive to get. It's a continuing education. They have a technical component I need to meet. So I would lean on a professional designation. And the 3 main ones are CPA, CFP, and CFA. CFA is not really as helpful, But yeah, you want to,
Mm-hmm.
and you can hire somebody for an hour of their time where they're not getting paid more than the hours of advice. And then that way, you know, you just get a mutual opinion. So if you say to your accountant, your CPA, I want to hire you for an hour to run these numbers with me and tell me your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't make money one way or
Yeah.
another, right? So there's no incentivized.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And then I feel like, yeah, the emotional element is kind of removed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Barbara's so great because she puts it all so straightforward and it's so easy to understand and like it's so clear and matter of fact. And
yeah,
she always like, as long as I've known her, she always has examples to like back up her experience, which always feels like, oh, like not that I wouldn't trust you anyway, Barbara, but I always like it, like since I've known you, you've always come back and you had, you know, this client had this experience and
no, it's really good to know. I know the people that we worked with to buy this, they mainly work with very rich people. And while like I have a Chase like private account or whatever that means, we're not rich. We've like amassed a certain amount of money by happenstance and working really hard, but we are not rich people by any stretch of the imagination. We don't feel rich. Neither of us came from means of any kind. So I do think that in some way we were swayed by this idea or by the way we were being talked to and wooed.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we're so flattered as to have made the decision. That's not really the reason. The reason was truly out of fear. Like I said, we're terrified of being poor and old. But it was interesting to learn what rich people do with their money. It's like, well, if they're rich, then they must be doing something right. Mm-hmm. And so let's consider it. And that was part of how we even began to give it careful consideration.
Yeah, and it definitely can be used, and it's not my wheelhouse. I don't deal with the uber wealthy. I deal with like normal people and get normal people to retirement. So I'm not to say that it isn't a vehicle that is used legitimately in work. It doesn't make any sense if you're not doing your retirement and you're stretched monthly that we're also funding this. Like it just your need currently, like if you're assessing your current need, which is we need more the thing that really resonated with me was like, how do you make money, right? Like, how do we get money from nothing, right? So we just look at where your money is currently going. It just doesn't seem to serve your current need, which the current need is we have a lot of healthcare costs for our young children who, as Lindsey pointed out, they're only young temporarily, right? It's a temporary situation they will go up and then they probably don't need all the, if you're getting them the services now, they get better. Hopefully when they don't need the services, they get better.
Right.
Older is the hope. And so if we have a temporary need now for more money, it doesn't make sense to be putting all of this money through the tax machine and 3 tax brackets to then fund a policy that's not helping with the current need when the current need seems like the priority. And so now we're stretched thin monthly and we're not funding retirement. So it's like, it feels like a double whammy.
Right, right. Well, I guess that was the trick, is that we were sold that as a form of retirement. Income. Yeah.
The hard part is you're going through the tax machine, high income bracket, because between you and your husband, you're making good money and you're in a high tax environment. So we're putting it all through the tax machine to fund it. So that's where, to me, that's like, look, red flags. Why pay all this tax if we can put it back through the machine, the tax machine, and it funded in retirement and lower your taxable income, which therefore net should give you more money for the monthly expenses. That's my logic. Now, I'm sure somebody would argue it he sells whole life insurance, but I would have your accountant.
I don't know what that would be.
Yeah, I would have your accountant run the math and tell you how much it would save you tax wise on it, because the investments that you have in your retirement should be equal, if not better, than what you have in your whole life policy. I mean, it's exactly they're telling you on the investments, so you can do investments without them. You don't use them.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm convinced. That makes sense. And frankly, I had as many people as I've talked to about this, not one of them has laid it out like that.
Well, I would love to hear what your accountant says when you ask him or her.
Okay.
To run the math.
I'll ask him. He's a nice guy in Michigan. So I'll ask. Yeah. And I'll let you know.
And good luck convincing your husband. I know that's another half the battle.
Yeah, that'll be the tricky part, because he'll be like, well, then what? What do we do? I'm like, I don't know. Tell them we're out. I don't know. Get some money back. I don't know. I'm sure there's a penalty.
It depends when you bought it, but there might be cash available to take out of it.
Yeah.
depending on the type of policy.
That I don't know. And if there isn't, then I don't know if it's total loss.
Yeah. Or you just don't pay into it anymore and let the dividends keep cooking and see how long it lasts. Well, see how long the dividends keep it alive. And you don't pay into it anymore.
I wonder if I can do that. It almost seemed like that wasn't an option.
Well, they don't want you to do that. They get paid every time you write a check.
Right. It's so messed up.
I mean, there's nothing, everyone needs to make, right? They're not nonprofits. So we knew they were making money. Right?
Yeah.
It's not a nonprofit.
Right.
They also have mortgages and expenses. So we know they're getting paid. I just think that you want to understand how they're getting paid, right? To see if it's incentivizing what the direction you're going in.
Right. Yeah.
I get paid too, but I'm very clear on how I get paid. And I don't sell whole life, but I get paid. Everyone gets paid when they do a job. So there's nothing wrong with getting paid. It's just that you don't want how they're getting paid to incentivize what they.
Yes. Yeah, that's been a sore point where I do bring that up to my husband. And he's like, yeah, but they're also offering all this free other financial advice that we don't have to pay for. And I'm like, we're not taking advantage of that anyway.
Yeah. And there's nothing free in life, right? So you're better off paying for the financial advice and not having the whole life probably than getting the whole life and getting everything else for free. Nobody does things for free. You probably don't do your work for free.
I couldn't.
Yeah, you couldn't, right? So nobody's doing anything for free. So if they're doing something for free, then you should be very suspicious because nobody works for free. Right. I don't know anybody who does it. My mother is retired and she works for free because she needs to get out of the house. She's the only person I know who works for free, just my mother. I haven't met anybody else who does that. Usually you're called a volunteer. So nobody is
or an intern.
Or an intern, yeah. So nobody's working for free. It's not happening.
Yeah. Right.
I don't think the interns work for free anymore either.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, they don't.
No, well, they're paying to work essentially.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're not doing it for free. That's like the first misnomer, right? Like they're not working for free.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. This is really good food for thought.
Well, keep us posted.
Yeah, please.
I will actually, because this will be a really interesting conversation tonight.
Yes, it will.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on and sharing everything with us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. I learned valuable things, and I am going to go and go online and see what my life insurance situation actually is.
Yeah.
Right now.
Good work to do.
Yeah. Figure that out. Yeah, I have some work to do.